Are you a Christian or a moralist? What does that even mean, and what's the difference? Today's Morning Minutes in the Bible on Throwback Thursday looks back to a March 1966 Plain Talk magazine article for the answer. Christian or Mosesian by Robert F. Turner. The law that God gave the Israelites through Moses had been in existence for 1,500 years when Christ came. Since Christ lived and died under the Mosaic dispensation, we are not surprised to hear him say, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do." Then Christ warned of the hypocritical actions of these teachers. That's in Matthew 23. Did Christ mean we today should be Mosesians instead of Christians? No. He was teaching Jews at a time prior to the Christian age. Later, he sent his apostles into all the world to preach his gospel to every creature. Matthew 28:19, Mark 16:15, Luke 24 verses 46 and following. Yet many people today think Christianity is nothing more than a few moral principles, which in reality Jesus cited from the law of Moses. For example, many seem to think Christianity consists of keeping the 10 Commandments. These commandments were given through Moses and are recorded in Exodus 20, verses 1 and following. The text states that they were given to the Israelites, and the seventh-day Sabbath is directly related to Jewish history, Deuteronomy 5:15. How can keeping the 10 Commandments make us Christians? What Jesus had to say on killing, adultery, swearing, etc. is different from what Moses said. Take time to read Matthew 5:21 and following. "But I say unto you" is prominent throughout. Jesus taught as one having authority and not as the scribes, Matthew 7:28 and 29. Now, does it not clearly follow that in order to be a disciple of Christ, we must accept his statements of matters and not rest our case on Moses? It is not enough to refrain from adultery. We must cleanse our hearts of lust. The oft-called golden rule was, according to Christ, a summation of the law and the prophets, Matthew 7:12. We read, "Love thy neighbor as thyself" in Moses' law, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. It is not my intention to minimize these great truths, and I realize that Christ gave them new dimensions. But he did much more than this for us. Christ died for us. As our king and priest, he reigns from heaven. From heaven, he sent his new covenant via the inspired apostles and prophets of the New Testament. And we must hear Christ, not Moses, if we are to be Christians. Note Matthew 17, verses 1 through 5. Christ established his church, giving certain commands by which we may become followers of his. Matthew 16, verses 18 and 19, Mark 9, verse 1, Acts 1, verse 8, and chapter 2, verses 1 and following. He is the Savior of the church, Ephesians 5:23 and following, having given himself for it, Acts 20, verse 28. He commanded his followers to partake of a memorial supper, saying, "This do in remembrance of me." See Matthew 26, verses 26 and following, and 1 Corinthians 11, verse 23 and following. The church, baptism, the Lord's Supper, etc. are not from Moses, nor from some church society of today. They are things of Christ. How can one ignore these things yet claim to be a Christian? To sum up, we have too long made Christianity some general moral platitudes as Mosaic as they are of Christ, and have ignored the genuine challenge of following the Son of God. Well, Robert, thanks for the challenge to be more than mere moralists. And I challenge you to come back tomorrow for another Morning Minutes in the Bible. Until then, this is James McClenny helping you have a great day.